Hello everyone and welcome to 2024. Don't worry, there is still some Gwent content on the horizon because with a brand new month comes a brand new set of Balance Council results. Now my hope and my intention is for each month we're going to get these out. They come on the last day of the month. I would then like to create a video and let you know my thoughts on the current changes that have just come in, because some of them I think are positive, some of them I think I don't like, and I'll explain why. I'll also try and give a little bit of my opinion on what the actual meta is going to look like as well, because honestly, the changes for this month, for instance, point to a very clear couple of decks that are going to be pretty strong and a few decks that will disappear off the face of the earth. Quite frankly, let's see if I'm right. And I'd love you to hold me accountable to these predictions as well. I will put them in. I will put my neck out. I will also maybe try and suggest things that I think we might have to see as a result of changes when I think that's appropriate as well. So these videos will be quite short, they'll be quite fast, and I'd love your interaction down in the comment section as well. If you agree with some of my takes, if you disagree, but most importantly, why? What do you think is coming, or why do you think I'm on the money or I'm miles out? As always, I really appreciate it. We are still, of course, streaming Gwent over on twitch.tv/Lionheart each week. It is by no means all that we're doing, but it is a big part of what we're doing. Without any further ado, as the thumbnail told you, the results are in. Okay, we're here, the results are in, and this is the permanent format now. For the first few, we were dancing backwards and forwards. Did we have 15 changes per type? It went to 5. You can see it is now 10. Gwentfinity is here. There will be no further changes to this structure or to the requirements. So that's the first big thing. You will always need either 50 wins in ranked or get to pro rank in order to vote. That's not changing. That is now in permanent. I think it's a little bit of a high bar personally, not because it's difficult to get to pro rank necessarily, but it's more of a time sink. I get the argument that you should have played that many hours in order to have a say, but I think that really, really limits the pool of people voting. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know. We'll get started straight away, though, with the power changes. The first one is Philavandrel. Philavandrel's gone up to 5 power. I think this is okay. I think Philavandrel for a long time hasn't really been worth playing. This means as a guarantee, you're going to start with 5 provision options rather than 4 provision options, and you're going to get less of a chance to see those 4 provision options in general. You're going to have to play it ranged always to get those 4 provision options. Typically speaking, 5 provision cards trade for more value than 4 provisions, so it is a buff to the card. There is no way of disagreeing with that. I think I'd rather have made him a little cheaper, if I'm being honest. But all things said, it's a buff to a card that doesn't really see a lot of play. It's not worth it as a high-end value card. Does it now make it into hand buff? Well, there's a couple of other changes to try and buff hand buff, so maybe. For me, still no. But I don't hate the change. Lord Riptide, this is a reversion. So this got nerfed to 9 base power. It's been buffed back. I don't like the buff back. I think the card trades for too many points too easily and is pretty much an auto-include in monsters. I'm not really sure how this got voted back, as at 9 power it's still fantastic because of the clash ability and the fact that the extra armor is there for might. This went in as monsters' go-to removal of engine, which at 8 provisions you could argue is expensive. You use a lock, for instance, but the clash value, it trades up pretty well for me. So I was very happy with this at 9. Not sure I'd have spent a vote on it myself. Is it hugely game-changing? Not especially. Not especially. So I think it's okay. It's okay. I do have a problem that it now can remove every defender in the game just by being dropped. With the maybe not the Northern Realms one with the shield, actually, but yeah. Not sure I'm a fan. Hate this. Hate everything about this. And there's a theme. Coral is now 7 base power. She is an 8 provision damage and thinning engine that is not removable by anything but a lock or very, very situational additions. I feel like anybody who voted for this, and I'm being quite intense about this, must never have played in the Skellige discard metas and didn't touch Gwent before 2022. This is crazy to me. I cannot get my head around why you would buff her power, especially when she's already at 8 provisions and she used to be 9. I feel like discard Skellige is going to be, well, the discard package is in every single Skellige deck and will be remarkably powerful. Anything that takes advantage of this, with the exception of one card in particular, which we'll get to later, I think this is absolute madness. Can't get my head around why you would do this, as beautiful as the art is. To me, that's a very strange but very impactful change. Okay. We buffed Ethereal. Now, I actually revealed Ethereal originally. When it was very first in the game, I revealed it. At the time, I said the current version of Ethereal going into the game would be game-breakingly good, and I was told by many people the card was a trash meme. Cue several metas of it being unplayably great, and also it needing nerfing down to kind of unplayable. We seem to have put it back. This was many years ago, though. I'm honestly curious to see how this does. I'm a little nervous as well. 5 base power, 8 provisions. It has Zeal on deploy, of course. It's doomed. We know that. The doomed change is the thing that stopped it being oppressive, which is okay. I think this is going to be quite powerful. I think you're going to see some ethereal combos in the month ahead, especially for swarming or spawning decks. This could work very, very well. I'm thinking something like NR Witchers, for instance. If I paired this with the 9 provision spawning Witcher in NR, just saying, at least Northern Realms will still have a deck to play. Next, speaking of Witchers, Eskel and Lambert both getting a power buff. Okay, Eskel and Lambert now are on par. I don't hate this. I don't mind the Thinning Witchers getting a bit of a buff. I think they are kind of relics of times past, really, but the thinning value they bring is still super good. Are we really going to see a return to Northern Realms Witchers? Probably the Golden Necker version of Northern Realms Witchers. Maybe. I think that could be one of the decks. So, prediction so far, Skellige Discard is going to dominate every Skellige deck. It's going to be the mid-range core of every Skellige deck because of the value. Maybe a return to NR Witchers too. Okay, we'll see. Next change. Hawker Smuggler is now 5 power. That's actually not bad. It still gets removed by 5 provision things, but it'll stick on the board a little bit more frequently. It's a little harder to remove. Are you still running it? Is it going in every Scoia'tael deck? No. But when you pair the Philovandrel buff, it's a nice little double 4-hand buff, potentially. I've always liked Scoia'tael, so I'm a little biased on this one, but it's fine. It's an okay buff. I think there are cards I would have probably given a power to first, but overall okay. Immortal Cavalry once spawn Northern Realms. Again, shields. Okay, so Immortal Cavalry are now 4 base power, of course. The spawned base copy, also 4 power. So this is actually a 2 power buff to this card, based on what it does. It's now, instead of being 2 shields and 6 for 5, it's 2 shields and 8 for 5. That's potentially quite scary. That's, you know, extra points, extra value. Okay, I can see it. Are we going to see some NR Shield Wall? Okay, maybe. Maybe. Not sure. Will it be impactful enough to shape a meta? Probably not. But Northern Realms desperately looking for some new options. Spoilers, so we'll see. An extra power on the cut-up lackey. This I really don't like. A bonded 4 provision crime engine. This, and I love the card. I always loved Horson Senior and playing kind of crime syndicate along these lines, but making these a little harder to remove I'm not so sure about, personally. Is it going to be fun? Yes. Am I going to try it? Absolutely. But I'm not 100% set that these should be harder to remove than they already are, because they now trade up to removal effectively, which feels a little bit unreasonable for a 4 provision card for me. And at 5 for 5, I would have been happy. But I don't think people voting this into play are also then going to have the forethought to nerf it to 5 provisions later. So we shall see on that one. And I hate this change. Dun Banner getting a power buff as well. Dun Banner is 4 provision thinning, something that we removed in Gwent a long time ago, deliberately, because, well, I could quote the video of the devs, but I don't need to. It appears the decision is that it's back. For certain factions only, of course. Dun Banner, I really hope we don't end up with commandos and Foltest spam. But I think we might. Foltest Dun Banner with soldiers could be on the menu here. It's effectively a double buff to these 4 provision thinning cards. I mean, realistically, they were playing at 6 for 4 plus 1 thin before, which I actually think was kind of reasonable. I think people undervalue thinning a lot, in my opinion. It's now 8 for 4 with 1 thinning, and you're going to say, well, Lionheart's not, but you've got to, the value of the thinning makes the provisions of the card thinned effectively free. So for me, this is now an 8 for 4. There is no, like, Northern Realms typically boosts. I can't understand why you wouldn't run this in any Northern Realms deck that has the ability to boost now. Like, I think it has to go into all of them, which kind of defeats the object of a 4 provision card, right? At 5 provision, sure, I'm a little confused again on this. I've gone through the power increases. If you voted for some of them, let me know your thought process on it. Because some of them I liked, some of them I think are going to be fun, like bringing the Thinning Witches back into play is really cool. Seeing what happens with Ethereal at 5 power. Philovandrel, kind of nice. Others seem mind-blowing to me. I can't understand making Coral only answerable with a lock or a heat wave. Basically, that seems very short-sighted to me. So I'm curious to see if anyone's got a good sort of rationale for that, and I'd love to hear it if you do. Next, the power nerfs. So, we start off with King Demavend, a card that realistically didn't see a lot of play last season, and almost none in World Masters, but the Northern Realms hatred appears to be continuing at a rate that only Nilfgaard has understood before, and he gets a power nerf. Now, I think I don't hate, the power nerf's fine. I don't think the card needed the power nerf, and I don't think it changes its playability too much, but it's fine. There are other things I think probably warranted more of a nerf than this, but it's okay. Are you now not running this card when you would have done? No. Other than the fact that you probably can't play the deck, but no. Regis Bloodlust. I don't understand a 1 power nerf to this card. I don't understand how this ended up making it in. Obviously, the unpleasant kind of binary version of Monster Mill as it originally started isn't possible now, because you don't ever lose the whole deck anymore. Is this kind of annoying that you can eat it with an Osril? Yeah. Does a 5% nerf to the power make it? Probably not. It's arguably the smallest nerf in Gwent history based on the change, right? It's a 5% power nerf. The average power nerf is somewhere in the vicinity of 20%. So I'm not sure if maybe this card has been a bigger problem elsewhere that I haven't seen. But yeah. And the next in the power decreases. Radovid Judgment. Are you just nerfing or changing all of the cards that I revealed? Once again, I revealed Radovid Judgment, and initially, I underestimated this one. We called him Sadavid. I'm not surprised to see this one take a nerf. I personally think nerfing the other Radovid would have been far more impactful, if I'm being honest. But this is okay. 5 base power makes it more removable. if you're running it in a non-inspired Zeal deck, I suppose. Because you'd run this in Pincer Maneuver or Inspired Zeal, really. Well, you run him anywhere, you run the other Radovid, right? In Northern Realms, so this could have an impact. I understand the amount that this can be worth. Typically, if you're running both Radovids, all of a sudden he's a thin, which is fine. He's also then a 5 damage as well, provided he sticks. This makes him more removable. I think I'm okay with it. This one doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't feel like Cave Troll was problematic at all. Particularly, I feel like there must be a group of people, and again, spoiler, who don't like some of the monster decks that were played at World Masters because of the things that were nerfed. The Idolist appears to have taken an absolute slaughtering here. Cave Troll now down to 6 effectively makes the Sabbath gameplay much, much harder. And spoiler, Sabbath also gets nerfed in these changes in provisions. I don't feel like Cave Troll was ever a problem. The fact that this can now be killed by the recently buffed Lord Riptide, I also don't like. Immediately on deploy, this can just remove it. Not sure about it. Don't really feel like it was necessary. Obviously, it does still have the 4 armor, but don't know. Not sure on that one. Don't think I like it. This card needed a nerf, and there was an argument. A lot of people. I personally would have preferred a provision nerf for this. The card is it's too consistent everywhere. So at 7 provisions, a potential double thin, double damage card feels like a lot. Hitting its power does nothing, objectively. Oh no, it's only 6 power? Like, the fact that it's still 6 tempo, plus 2 rock barrages, which therefore is another 8, like, I don't think that was where you wanted to hit it. I was talking, and I voted myself for a provision nerf to this to take it to 8. I had a few people argue that, well, that'll hurt the whole construct package for people playing all-in construct decks. For the 3 people who are trying to play all-in constructs, I understand that. But that doesn't really speak to the reason why you would want to nerf this. You want to nerf it because it's too omnipresent as a very mid-range, amazing thinning tool. So I'm a little confused. Obviously, any nerf to it I think is warranted because it's just too good. The fact that people could just play it for single rock barrage thinning in some lists and it be valuable is mad. Still not convinced though that the power provision, the power nerf was the way to go over provisions. Just me though. Just me. Dennis feels a little bit harsh to me. He is obviously the slam in the Scoia'tael list, that thinning, you're going with the Armorer's Workshop being played for the first time in its history. I mean, if you're going to nerf him, I think a power nerf is probably the way to go. Again, I don't think it's going to be impactful. Over on the big picture, is this going to mean I now don't play that list? No, realistically not. And if enough people were sick of it that they felt he needed a nerf, then I think it's fine. But I don't, again, it's another example of a nerf for me that it's not really going to do much in terms of the overall archetype. I know we have to deal with this in baby steps, but it is what it is. Vildkarl. This is the definition of a pointless change. I mean, it's... So, obviously, Championess Foulblood never changes. This is actually... Okay, so... This is a buff, effectively. This power nerf is a buff because you only need to use 2 leader charges now, right? Which gives you an extra leader charge of self-wound for self-wound. Now, I don't think that's needed or necessary. I don't think... Now this is an auto-include in self-wound, I would say, for the value that it gives you, because obviously you actually want to absorb those leader charges somewhere. You usually had 3 for this. It'll make kind of lippy decks slightly better, and you probably do try and squeeze it into self-wound in the mid-range now, or at least as an argument. I take back what I said. It's not a pointless change. It's okay. I don't think this was hurting desperately for it. But maybe this will allow more self-wounds? I'm not sure anyone wants that, but given the buffs to the discard package, which self-wound typically used to run, I feel like we're going to get a decent amount of self-wound Skellige. I understand why people want to nerf this. I get it, but I don't think it's necessary. I really don't. I'm sure this has bounced up and down a few times now. Is it annoying that Nilfgaard can play a 10 for 6 in a short round? Yeah. Can other factions potentially do the same thing? Also, yeah. I don't know. I know the downside of this isn't really that much of a problem, but I feel I'm constantly worried that we're nerfing things in archetypes or whole factions without trying to buff things in the same faction. And we're kind of heading towards Northern Realms and Nilfgaard just kind of not existing at the moment. And we've, for a very long time, and after a lot of consistent work, have solidly had all 6 factions, not just playable with a single deck, but diversely across multiple. And I feel like we're kind of hurtling towards that not being the case at a rate of knots. And it makes me a little bit nervous that we might not be learning our lessons. Slave Driver. Okay. Again, nobody plays Slave Driver for the Slave Driver's base power. Oh no, it's 2 power instead of 3. Why this isn't a 6 provision card? This is the definition of a 6 provision card. Because it not only can it create 6 provision cards, but it's literally a Swiss Army knife. It can create you an engine, it can create you another lock, it can create you a point slam like we just saw. How the power nerf makes no difference to whether or not you run this. I know I've just said don't all nerf Nilfgaard, but this is the definition of a 6 provision card for me. So, as a result, I understand the desire to nerf it. I don't understand the choice of nerf. Because again, I don't think this makes a difference, so the people who are annoyed with it will still see it. Of course, again, a power nerf is a big thing. This, I was talking about percentages. It's a 33% nerf to its power, but that's still 1. Will 1 point be the difference in some matches? Absolutely. Power nerfs are impactful, and they can be. And also, there are more things, like provision is almost always more impactful, so this is going to be the case, but now we can't. Now are you nerfing this to 6 as well? Because we can't nerf it to 6 and buff it back to 3. I feel like we've taken steps backwards in the very best kind of sort of sideways with this. Feels, yeah. Oxenford Scholar, I get. This card, it's a 4 provision point slam in very, very polarized decks. I like that it's playable. I don't love how easy it was to just be misc points, albeit once again, it's another thing that's going to hurt the kind of Arrakis swarmy lists that did run this. So lots of other things did too, but we are where we are. They are the power changes. Onto the provisions. So, Hidden Cache. It has an extra. I like Horde, and I've always liked Passiflora. I'm nervous about making Hidden Cache and Horde good. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm pretty nervous about that. Because the second Syndicate scenario, in my opinion, is the most underrated card, possibly, in all of Gwent. If Horde is too good, that thing runs wild. But we'll shake it up a little bit. Jackpot, okay. Jackpot had to be nerfed down to 13 provisions because it was just so oppressive. Or rather than reworking the whole thing, they decided to kind of put it down into the doldrums. It hasn't seen much play since, so you know what? I'm interested to see how it goes. 14 provisions. Okay, it's 1 provision for the list. We'll see. Fruits of Isgith. Now, this one I do disagree with. I I think people underestimate how many points this leader ability is. Maybe it's just me. It doesn't look like one of the strongest leader abilities in the game, but I genuinely think it is. It encourages you to play into 3 rounds to get maximum value, of course, but the deck likes that. It can play for more points than almost any other leader ability across 3 rounds for the value it can draw you. So I never minded this at 13. I felt like this was a 13 provision leader ability. Apparently not. So, sorry, it was at 12, my bad. It's actually, it's now at 13. Okay. We had no other 12s, I don't think. But either way. Not sure. No other buffs to monsters that would play it, though. So I think, overall, maybe this is just fine. Maybe it'll... I guess Thrive Cushy might make a... you don't even run it in that. This is going to be relics, isn't it? I guess. We'll see. We'll see. Kind of pure Thrive. You can run it with a couple of different things. Maybe it's okay. Okay, I know people don't like Temple. I'm not sure how many more times you can spend a nerf on a card. Like... yeah. I think... for many months, this list has got consistently worse. For me, a card like this, like many others, some people feel subverts the rules of Gwent, right? Temple of Melissili, people argue, is the same because it just ignores the provision limits, right? Which, you know, this guy does too, because he also ignores the deck building restrictions of Gwent by giving you more copies of bronzes. But we have different problems with it. We don't mind it if Uma does it, or if Henry, everyone loves Henry, everyone hates Temple of Melissili, but they're similar, right? Like, so, I don't know. Will we still see people play Temple? Probably. Will the list have a chance competitively? Less so. Like, I don't like the card. Don't get me wrong, I really don't like the card, but at 13 provisions, and I could see what they created, I really felt it was okay. I'll be honest, I didn't want to... with the number of things that are unplayable or are too good, I'm not sure this made it onto the list for me. But enough of you thought so. Do you genuinely believe Northern Realms has a playable list? That's one of my big takeaways, and I'd love your opinion. What Northern Realms deck is now actually going to exist? That's my big question, I guess. What Northern Realms deck because like NR Knights hasn't been able to compete for 3, 4, 5 months already, no buffs to it, and the only Northern Realms buff I can see is a kind of pointless one over to the side that we'll get to in a bit. I don't know. Is my question. So I'd love answers to that. I'd love ideas. I'd love to check out some of the lists that you guys think NR will be able to play with next season. Witch's Sabbath. I'm a little on the fence with this change because I've never liked constantly going in and out of the graveyard in Gwent, but at the same time, it's been a mechanic for a very long time. Witch's Sabbath did see a lot of play last season as a result of World Masters, because of course the IDA list uses it. I think the nerf to this and the Frenzy Down Earth together, I feel like, and maybe you'd argue the Oxenfurt Scholar as well, I don't know, it's in some of them. I feel like that might have been the nail in the coffin for that list, certainly consistently on ladder. Will people still play it? Yes. Is it now quite a bit less consistent and quite a bit worse? Yeah. So, the worst, stupidest, most pointless change. Magic Compass further nerfed to 11. Now, the first balance change really concerned me the first month, and it made me worry for Gwent's future, because people voted emotionally, shall we say, rather than with any actual understanding of game mechanics. But the Magic Compass, I'm going to keep calling it Golden Compass, went to 9. It became very playable. It was by no means the top meta deck, in spite of what a few people tried to show on patch day. And it got nerfed again to 10. Fair enough. So why has it gone to 11 when it didn't get played at all last season? Because lots of people wanted to play the card again. The whole idea is that that's the case, right? Some things are going to bounce. As a result of this, and I believe a couple of streamers have mentioned, oh, you know, I'm going to vote maybe to put this back to 9 provisions. People have further nerfed it to try and outweigh that, and it's now at 11 and a completely redundant card. This doesn't bring balance to Gwent, it just deletes cards. I think it's sad. If enough people want something to be buffed, maybe it should get buffed, I guess, even if I don't like it. But if you're voting to nerf something to prevent that, that's not a good direction for any game to go if it's going to survive, you know? So I can't. If you did vote for this, and just a genuine request, let me know in the comments why did you nerf this to 11? Was it because you saw lots of it last season and felt it was so oppressive? Or was it because you didn't want people to be able to buff it? I genuinely want to know. Genuinely want to know. Muta Generator goes to 9 provisions. Muta Generator decks will still exist. They will still go. I hate this card, and I've hated it since its inception. I'm a little worried that this goes of the route of being in every single nerf for the rest of time, or at least until it's out of Golden Necker range. This was a 6 provision card. It's now had a 50% provision increase, and I think it will still probably see play, albeit only in kind of something like Miamon's Golden Necker list, because the lists around it that used to play higher provision cards can't exist anymore. I have a horrible feeling this will be nerfed again to 10 provisions, and and this is a difficult one. Over the course of this month, I want to try and have some sort of dialogue about the factions that we're nerfing, because I'm okay with never seeing this card again. To a level. Like, I think at 9 provisions it's fine. I don't think it's much different than it was at 8 provisions, because ultimately it can generate so much carryover that I understand why people don't like it, but it can also play for 0 in a lot of situations, and certainly into a lot of matchups. It's by no means super broken. You just have to, but I digress. If we're going to nerf this whole archetype away, which we are doing, what are we buffing? What are we buffing? Because Northern Realms really is just boosty soldiers. So which archetypes are we going to try and resurrect so that we don't end up with a complete imbalance? Because when NR is terrible, other things are good or too good simply because lists from NR don't exist, and we've played that, we've done that. I don't know why we're trying to move backwards. Like, I get the nerf. I think I'm okay with this at 9 provisions. If you think you want to nerf it again, let me know. I'm curious. I really am. Tempest. So we've got a bit of a mixed bag. Tempest to 7 provisions. It's a double thinning nature card. I kind of liked Tempest, but it was probably a bit too consistent. The only way this could be nerfed is in provisions, of course, because it's a special. Anything that, because we've got some thinning engines being made stronger and cheaper, and some being made more expensive, which feels kind of weird, because it's, as we pass each other, the ones getting more expensive and all the decks that use it are going to get worse, while simultaneously other decks that previously were kind of there. So we, instead of going from kind of this to this, we're going this. So I'm interested. Like, I don't hate this at 7 provision. I think it's fine. But if this is 7 provision, double thin, double damage plus nature synergy, with no body at all, how is this also still 7 provisions with 6 power of body? And double direct removal rather than slow? I'm not sure. Not sure. Thirsty Dame. This card, prior to Gwentfinity, I asked the devs directly, could they add the text, during your turn? Unfortunately, the answer was no, as we were past the point of possibility. So this is, for me, the strongest of the 6-power faction engines. As a result, I get why it's 6 provisions. If Messenger of the Sea is 6 provisions, as it should be, then this absolutely should be. There's not really much else you can say on it. It's a 6 provision card. The existence of this without that caveat in the text means that against things like Symbiosis or even like lots of things, it just... anything that uses Vitality, it kind of is really problematic. So I do get this at 6. I don't think it has the biggest impact on status Nilfgaard to make this 6, and still, for me, the best card in Nilfgaard, Philippe van Moorlehem, remains insane. It's better. That card is better and more important to bleed than Masquerade Ball, which is insane. This card is very regularly more important to Heatwave than Masquerade Ball, so I get it. I get this change. Makes sense to me. Not surprised by this one. It's okay. Like, I understand a lot of the lists that had Onias in frustrated people, and they were lists I don't like. I do enjoy Siege. I'm not going to pretend I don't. I do enjoy the kind of the order lists of getting lots of order abilities with things like Ravening Kimbolt. I really like those lists. I thought they were fun, but I hate Traveling Priestesses. So, potato, potato. This is now this has a floor of 4, and in a more control-oriented meta, which I think we have just voted ourselves into. This card won't survive anyway, but I'm not surprised to see it go to 6. Honestly, I'm not surprised. Okay, last but by no means least, it is the provision decreases. So we are here mostly for buffs. Well, not to start with, because we've nerfed Inspired Zeal. Not really surprised to see Inspired Zeal take a nerf. I personally would have seen Pincer Maneuver over this if we were nerfing one of them. Obviously, Zeal enables some stuff, but now Northern Realms is a Pincer Maneuver archetype almost exclusively, I think. I don't hate Zeal at 14, though, and I think it probably belonged there. I'd just like to see what we're going to do. I've said it already, don't want to repeat myself. What does Northern Realms play this season? I certainly hope it's not Alumni. A Chapter of Wizards gets a surprise buff to 12 provisions. I doubt. The Alumni meta was one of the worst, and the Patience keyword is one of my least favorite, because it's a really cool idea in principle, and in practice, it is the definition of answer or lose, which rigidly shapes the meta. Here I've been complaining that Northern Realms is going to have nothing to play. If it ends up being this, it'll be a month that I skip. Triss Telekinesis gets a buff as well. She is now just 10 provisions. I think that's fine. Love the buff to Geralt Quen. Really excited to see Geralt Quen at 9 provisions. He is a Witcher thinning engine with the buffs as well earlier on to the Witcher trio. Golden Necker Witchers genuinely looking like a possibility. Or just, like, none of the Witcher decks are good enough in their own right to run outside of Golden Necker, but the Witcher packages now might start finding a little bit of a place. So, I don't hate it. Okay, this one, I was talking about the 6 provision engines. Each faction kind of got one. Fallen Knight is Syndicates. This card is... I don't think this card was ever the problem. I love Firesworn. It's probably my 3rd favorite archetype in Gwent. Fallen Knights are super strong. I think, obviously, the downside is they play into Tall Punish, but so do Thirsty Games, so do Messengers of the Sea, and this one has Veil, so it's not even lockable, it just has to be Tall Punished. I'd love Firesworn to be good. I think Firesworn was better than we gave it credit for already, but the extra provisions will help. So overall, it's an interesting change. I'm a little surprised by it, but I would love to see more Firesworn do well. I don't think this is the card, objectively, that should have been improved. But, okay. Circle of Life, a 4 provision nature card, 3 damage, 2 carryover. So, there's always been a backwards and forwards about the idea of should Circle of Life be a 4 provision card? This argument, I think, or this discussion had been had many times. I'm curious to see what it does at 4. Does this make... Is there any reason to run this over what you would have run at 4p already? In a deck that plays Scoia'tael nature cards. If you're playing hand buff, non-Renfree, sure. But I understand it's the only buff we can give the card, so I'm absolutely fine to see it down at 4 because it just doesn't get played at 5. So I don't hate this. I think this is an okay change because this card, it felt like a 4.5 to me. And as we can't change the amount of damage or the amount of buff in any way, at 4 I actually quite like it. This is a problem. We have Turzak Skirmisher. Just the coral change was enough to make discard come back everywhere. Making this thinning back to 4 provisions is, I think, so all of the thinning mechanisms were moved into the 5 provision slot a while ago. I'm going to say 6 months. It could be 9 months ago. Since those changes were made, deck diversity has improved significantly. Faction abilities have become, like, the variety in factions has increased because we've had to have different thoughts. We've had to build our decks a different way. And we're going back to what it was like, which is a choice. Now, if we're going to make discard or thinning 4 provision, we have to make it that way for everyone, right? So I guess next month the plan is to vote for all the other factions to have their objective thinning down to 4 as well. But the biggest takeaway so far for me is absolutely that discard Skellige is going to be, it's going to be around, honestly, because that's like the discard package now just goes into pretty much everything Skellige does again. And I kind of liked that that wasn't the case. I liked that it was good in some things, but it's a huge amount of buff. Coral being unremovable by even 6 power removal now, on top of 2 extra provisions, that's a lot. And again, we see, okay, Sewer Raiders and Casino Bouncers. This is a huge, huge buff for Syndicate. So obviously there has been a concerted effort to try and make the thinning cheaper again. Which, I understand the idea and the argument, because I think I was one of the people who had it when they changed it. Consistency should be cheaper, because if consistency is cheaper, we can build more consistent decks, and that should, in theory, increase the skill ceiling, because I always find my cards, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. However, on the flip side of that, it means we see the same cards in every damn deck, and that's really dull. It takes away a lot, and I personally really do think the game got a lot better when these all went to 5 and we had to think a little bit more and be a little bit less greedy. So I don't like these 2 changes, especially both in the same faction. Why would Syndicate not run both of these now? Horde, like Hidden Cache, double thinning. Why would you not run it always? Like, why would you not? I don't. It's a genuine question. In Syndicate, at very least Casino Bouncers, and frequently both, they're just free. They're literally free now. So, yeah. Final change. This really surprises me. I didn't ever think this would get back to 4. I preferred it at 4 in a just this card sense, albeit I do wish it didn't have Intimidate at that point because of the value it has in the Vice decks. I think the Vice decks have the potential to get even more consistent now if you can fit one of those thinning packages in, especially as the Bare Knuckle Brawler is now not just there himself, but back in the pool of spawnable cards as well. Bear that in mind, of course, as a 1 power spender. So, what's the takeaway? It's a mixed bag for me. I understand a lot of the changes, and I really don't understand some of them. I'm interested to see how this meta pans out. I think Northern Realms is really going to struggle I do expect to see some NR Golden Necker Witches appear. I think the discard package is in every Skellige deck. Potentially discard Self-Wound will be making a serious return. And Syndicate's going to be powerful this season. Vice, by the Bare Knuckle Brawler alone, gets better. The Hidden Cash buff, alongside double thinning at 4 provision. It's an interesting one. Nilfgaard gets no objective buffs at all. And I think we really need to be looking at what we're going to be able to do there, I think. Because sure, it's played a lot, but I think it's going to start lagging behind. Same with Northern Realms. Minor, if not minimal buffs to Scoia'tael. Basically non-rent-free hand buff, which kind of doesn't exist. So this one has been... We've nerfed a lot, we've made a lot worse, and we've made 2 very, very specific things a lot better. So I expect them to take over the meta for the coming months. Am I right? Well, I guess we'll find out when I do my predictions next month, won't we? But that is going to be all from me. I feel like the overall tone of this one was more negative, but that's probably because I don't like many of the changes. Will I end up loving the meta? I hope so. I really do. I would love to know what you're thinking on the base of it as well. Let me know in the comments down below why you think these changes were good, middling, or indifferent. What's your favorite change and what's the one you like the least? I'd love to hear from you. As always, my friends, it is my pleasure to be here. I love getting to make content for you, and I do hope you enjoy the video. And I'm looking forward to next month's already, when hopefully I can be a little happier about it. I will do my best 7 days before the patch to give you guys my recommendations or my thoughts on what should be changed. And you can see if you want to vote with them. That's something I'm planning on doing. So minimally, you will get this video, the pre-video of what I will change, and a couple of gameplay videos as well through the course of the month. So hopefully you will tune in for them. Love you all, and I will see you next time.